Hey everybody, Lonnie here. This Pi tip is going to be how to create event frames manually using the AF SDK. I'm going to go through a typical use case, why people do this by reporting downtime events against an asset in AF. We're going to go ahead and go through finding that asset, associating an element, an event frame to that element, and then opening it, closing the event frame. We're also going to do some additional things like assigning a username on who created that, and we're going to look at how to handle user codes using enumerations within AF. So we're going to use a whole bunch of different capabilities around the AF SDK to create a downtime event, specifically around that use case. All right, so let's go ahead and get to it. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. This is my sample application, my base application that I've been using on most of these Pi tip videos. We're just connecting to my Pi system that I have deployed in the cloud. There's connection info here in this class that you can change if you're trying to connect to your Pi system. And we're just going through and sending in the username, password, and then connecting. I want to jump over to my Pi system and look at what I have set up here with event frames and how we're going to track our downtime events. In our library, I have an event frame that I've created called Downtime. In this, it just has a name, Downtime, and I created this naming pattern using the element name, which you'll see that'll come into play here shortly. We've got Downtime just to describe what it is. I want to include a reason code and a timestamp. That'll make it unique. Under the attribute templates, I set up an operator, which is just a type string, and a reason code, which is a enumerated type downtime reason codes. So under here, you can go to enumerated sets, and there's downtime reason codes that I set up. And if we go over and look at downtime reason codes in an enumeration set, you can see that I have a bunch of different possible reasons for being down. Okay, I want to create a downtime event associated with some assets. I have my antimatter relays that I've been using in the other examples, and we're going to go ahead and grab one of these relays, and we're going to create some downtime events associated with that relay. We're going to first create the event, set that reason code and the username so we know that who actually entered the code, and then we're going to create some additional functionality that will eventually close that downtime event. So there's going to be two steps: opening it, populating everything with data, and then closing it. So let's go ahead and jump over to Visual Studio and start writing some code. Alright, the first thing we need to do is get an element, an antimatter relay that we can create some downtime events against. So I'm going to go ahead and find my element, and here we want to use our AF element search capability. We'll use our AF element search, and in that we need to pass in our database and a string name. We'll just call this our relay search, and then our query. So we'll just pass in, we're going to use our template, and that's called antimatter relay. Then we want to go ahead and grab a name. The name, we can set this to, maybe this would be something that we configure that we pass into a method. So let's go ahead and make this a variable. I'll create that here in a second as a string. Call that relay name. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and set up a relay name. It's going to be type string go ahead and set it up against T001. Let's go ahead and just display that, execute the search and then display it. Here's our relay search. Here we're going to do our find elements, and we want to get just the first or default. Now if our relay does not equal null, it's actually CW for console write line, and we'll just print out our relay name. Let's go ahead and run this and make sure that this is working. Okay, cool. We found relay 001. Now we want to go ahead and create an event frame that's associated with that relay downtime event. The first thing we need to do is create a new event. Then we're going to associate all the information, like the element that we're using, the name, and the reason code, and all those other things. So let's create our event first. And we're going to use new AF event frame right here. And in here we need to pass in our database. And I want to give this a name. We'll just call this creation, and then the last thing I want to pass in is a template. We have not created a template yet, so let's go ahead and get our template. Let's grab our template. And I'm just going to grab our element templates, and from there we know that we have our template that's called downtime. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is go ahead and take this element that we have, our T001, and add that to the event. And that's going to be called our primary referenced element. Now let's go ahead and set the start time for the event. Let's actually set start time. And we'll use our date time now. Now remember that kind is set to local, which will get converted to UTC just like what we'd like to have happen. All right. Now I want to go ahead and set up the operator and the reason code. But before I do that, we need to actually create those. And this may be something that we're also going to pass into a method later on. So let's go ahead and just create those. Operator name, and we'll have Scotty. And then we'll also create a downtime reasons, and we're going to make this enumeration sets. And just like with the template, we'll go ahead and just grab that. Okay, we have our enumeration sets and our username set up. So now let's go ahead and populate those. And this is an event frame attribute now. So we're going to grab the proper attribute. And we want to do a set value on this. And we'll create a new AF value. And we're going to pass in the actual value. And then same thing with our reason codes. Reason code. We want to set value, new AF value, and here we want to take our downtime reason and grab whatever the reason is that we want to use, and I'm going to make this pass in a string here, and we'll also define this up top. So let's go ahead and define our reason right here. That will be unplanned. This should match one of our reasons that's in our reason code. Okay. Obviously, if this was production code, you'd maybe want to do some checks here to make sure that that actually is matching the reason code. And usually you would use something like this enumeration set to use in a drop-down list of some sort on a UI where the user would select a code. And then if it's freeform, you may not want to actually make it type enumeration, the attribute. You may just want to make it type string, and then the reason codes is just possible reason codes. But anyway, we're going to keep this relatively simple here. Okay, the last thing I need to do is I want to actually set the name of this event frame based off of that the naming pattern that I have. And if we go back and look at the template, you see we have this naming pattern here, and I have all these items basically available. I know what element this is at this point. I know that I have a reason code at this point. So we want to, and we have our start time. So we want to use this pattern and have it set up. Right now, the name of it is just called manual creation. That would be, if we created this event, that's what it would be populated as. So we want to just do something very simple here. There's a class called AF name substitution, and we can do a resolve name, and then I'm going to pass in the event frame object, and using that template, we want to using our template, we want to use our naming pattern property, and that'll basically take that event frame naming pattern and take all the various values in that event frame and then create it. The last thing we need to do is commit our changes. And do an AF database, and we're going to check in, and we're going to use our AF checked out mode, all objects that have been checked out for this session, which will be this event frame here will be that object. Okay, let's do a console write line here, and let's just and we'll just do our event frame name. Okay, let's go ahead and try running this and see what happens. Oh, it looks like we have an error here. Downtime reasons was null. Yeah, that's null. Reasons unplanned. Let's see, our downtime reasons did not get populated up here. Okay, it looks like I didn't spell this correctly. Let's get that set up right, and let's try it again. Okay, great. We have our event frame created. Let's go ahead and confirm that within AF. Here I have a downtime event search set up here. We're just looking at the downtime template, and we're just searching for everything. And here you can see we have our element name, our recent code, downtime, and it started 15 seconds ago. That is perfect. Okay, the next thing we need to do is go ahead and close this event frame. What I'm going to do is we'll comment out this code here, and we'll come down here and we'll do a search for the event frames that are open, and then we'll close them. We'll use a combination of the relay name and looking for if the event is in progress or not. Alright, let's find the event frame. This is going to use the event frame search, which is going to be very much like the template search. And we're going to give it a query here. Template name is downtime. The name is going to be relay name, and then we want to add an asterisk to that to make sure that we wildcard, so all that other stuff that's appended will make the search still valid. This will, the in progress will set us up so that we can, we're only going to find open event frames, not something that's been closed. Find the event frames. Our start index will start at 0, and we do a full load, false, and page size we'll just bring in 10 events at a time. Okay, let's do a for each loop here. Let's do a console write line, and we'll go ahead and set this up. And let's do an item name, then we'll do our time. Set this up as an item start time to end time, and then duration, so we can pull in all these. Yeah, I was just gonna pull in. We don't want to go beyond 10. Let's assume that there could be hundreds of these. So I want to go ahead and break out of this after I just display the first 10. So the way we could do that is we can go if, and we'll have a counter here. If that counter is greater than 9, then we want to break. So we'll increment the counter. Whoops, we'll create a counter up here. We'll set that to 0, and then we'll just increment our counter. Counter plus, okay. All right, this should find the event frame, so let's go ahead and take a look. And it did not. Let's go ahead and remove these spaces here, just to make sure everything's nice and tight. Okay, great. We found our event. Now let's go ahead and close it. Okay, let's go ahead and close our event, which is pretty simple at this point. We're just going to take our item and we're going to set our end time. And we'll set this to our date time now. And we need to check that in once it's completed. Do it if there's multiple events, we'll set all the end times and we'll just check everything at once. Checked out anything that's been checked out this session. Closed, and we should be able to see the end time set now. Let's go ahead and run this and take a look. Okay, we have our now we have our end time set. Let's go ahead and take a look. Let's do a search here. We can see that that event is now closed. And another thing we can look at real quick is the attributes. And we can see that our attributes are set up correctly. Okay, so we have we've created the downtime event, we've associated it with this relay, and we set a reason code operator name, and then we've closed it. The last thing I want to do is just to make this a little more usable and to start breaking these out in methods. This is usually like the next step. Once I have something working, the next thing I like to do is break it out into methods that I can start reusing, and then that would eventually become the structure for a class. I think I want to create several methods here. We want to be able to create event frames, find event frames, and close event frames. So let's go ahead and create that. So the first thing is to create an event frame. Come down here, we could do static Creating a downtime event looks like all of this within here. So let's go ahead and cut that out, bring it down into here. Yeah, we need an AF database. We don't need to print out the relay name, but we do need a relay, which is an AF element. Looks like that should do. And then the next thing we want to do is, so we can uncomment out this. Get my bracket in here, braces, and then we can do something like we can do a create downtime event, and then we can pass in our database, and then we can pass in the relay. And that would create that. Okay. Now we want to go ahead and be able to do a search. So let's do that. Here I want to pass back the event frames that I found. We did IEnumerable event frame. So here's our search. We also have the closing here, which we'll remove that part. So we don't need to check it in, and we don't need to set the end time. We just want to return all the events that we found here. And we'll return our events. And here we need a database. And it looks like we're going to need a relay name. And that should take care of our search. We're not closing it anymore. That looks good. And we'll say this is finding our open downtime events, because we're looking for our progress if true. And in fact, if we want to make this a little bit more versatile, we could just find events, and then we could do something like this. We could do something like in progress, and that would be type Boolean. And then we could come over here, and we could do in progress. Put that in. Get rid of this. Okay. All right, I like that. That's going to be finding our events. So here's where we do the search to get our event frames. We can get rid of, we would just call it right here. So let's get rid of this line, and we would say the events would be find downtime events, and we pass in our database, and then we can pass in our relay name. And we can pass in, do we want it in progress or not? So let's just say true. That should give us our events, and then finally we're closing them here. Let's set up a method for closing. In this situation, we want to send in, I think, a list of events, and we're going to close them all out. So we'll just take this right here, come down, we're going to iterate through our events. We still need our counter also. Actually, in this case, we're already going to have our list of events, so let's just let's not do our counter. We're going to set our end time. Here we need our a list of events. And frame, and that's going to be called events. And we need to pass in our database also. Let's go ahead and call this AF that. This will close all the events that we pass in. Okay, now let's go ahead and see. We're going to find our downtime events here, and then we can go ahead and we can close our downtime events and pass in our database and our events where everything's in progress. We don't need this anymore. Okay, I think in this situation I just want to close all the events. This counter is not going to work unless we put it in both, and we probably need to configure that. So we're just going to find our events. We can so here if I look at okay, we're going to close. Okay, we're going to find our element. We're going to create a downtime event against that. Other thing too that we should do is we should probably pass in these two items. So let's go ahead and pass in our name and reason. Let's go ahead and do that, and let's pass in our operator name and our reason. Okay, so we're going to create it, we're going to find it, and then we're going to close it. So let's see what happens. Some breakpoints here. And test it out. Okay, great. We found the relay. We're going to send in the operator name and the reason, unplanned. Press F5. Okay, that should have created it. Let's go ahead and take a quick look. And let's refresh. Let's refresh here. All right, we can see that we have an open event frame here. This is the one that we just created. Perfect. This is the last one that we closed. Now we're going to find the event frames. Let's go ahead and press F5. Let's take a look and see. I think we should have listed that out. So the event frame was found, and you notice end time is not set, it's 999. That's uninitialized. It's great. Now we're going to go ahead and close this. Here you can see it says it's closed. Now you can see we have an end time. You can come back and verify that. I'm using PI System Explorer. Let's go ahead and refresh this. Now you can see that it is closed. There's a closing mark now. We do have a start and we do have an end time. So that is exactly what we wanted to do. Okay, I hope you can see that creating event frames for downtime purposes is really not all that difficult. You could hook this in numerous ways into an overall downtime strategy using some kind of user interface at the machine, or you know, wherever the location is where this downtime should be captured. I like the idea of capturing downtime kind of like where the action is right when it happens. Being able to do it automatically or manually, either one will work. A lot of times those reason codes, you got to capture those from people just because it's really hard to figure out otherwise. Anyway, that is it for manually creating downtime events, event frames. I hope that you enjoy this video. If you do, please press the like button, and if you enjoy the content that I'm putting out, please subscribe to my channel. The more subscribers I get, the more motivated I get. And if you have any suggestions of what you'd like to see in the future around the PI system or data visualization in any form, just let me know in the comments below. Thanks again. My name's Lonnie, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.